Morning, people. Now, before we get into Home Secretary Suella Braverman's horrendous speech about asylum seekers just now, let's get some stuff clear. For starters, the Tories are almost certainly going to lose the next election, and so the Tories will probably want to get rid of Rishi Sunak because the members never even voted for him in the first place, leading to yet another leadership contest in the Tory party. And so everybody who tried to be the Tory leader last time will be starting their campaigns now, and Suella Braverman has a habit of trying to do that by trying to appear as extreme as possible.
I think we spend too much on welfare. There are too many people in this country who are of working age, who are of good health, and who are choosing to rely on benefits, on taxpayers' money, on your money, my money.
The second thing I want to make clear is that almost every person who supports taking in refugees understands that it has to be done in a controlled manner that recognises the resources available in the host country. But in the UK, the richest 10% of households own 43% of all the wealth in the UK, and the bottom half owns just 9%. But the Tories, who brag about defunding poor areas to help rich ones, will tell you that we don't have enough to go around, so we can't afford to share with others. And even that forgets the fact that we have major labour shortages across the economy, so we desperately need immigration. But here we go.
War, political instability and climate change will of course exacerbate migration flows.
It's incredible that she says this shit with a straight face. War. Well, we're selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, which are being used to bomb hospitals and schools in Yemen. Political instability? Well, we just pulled out of Afghanistan, leaving them to the Taliban. And climate change? Literally last week we rolled back our plans for green cars. See, for me, the worst thing about this speech is this idea of burning the lands around your castle while pulling up the drawbridge.
The fundamental drivers of this epoch-defining challenge are economics and demography.
Okay, so she acknowledges that economic migration, which she agrees is different to asylum seeking, is driven by the fact that those countries are so much poorer than ours. And yet the UK makes 10 times more money selling the weapons that are being used to bomb civilians in Yemen than it gives in foreign aid to Yemen. So our relationships with these countries are mathematically designed to increase the gap between their economies and ours. So if Suella Braverman had even a drop of self-awareness, she'd realise that she just admitted that her policies are making the asylum crisis worse.
The fact is that our countries are exceptionally attractive. 4% of those polled by Gallup, approximately 40 million people, named Britain as their preferred destination.
Can somebody tell me the name of that comedian who talked about how the UK colonised, enslaved and robbed half the world, telling them that the UK was the greatest country in the world, forcing our language on them, and then got surprised that they followed us back?
These numbers are respectively more than half of our current total populations.
Well, let's be clear, nobody's suggesting that we take in all those people. We take in nowhere near as many as Germany or France, but Suella Braverman is suggesting that we take in even less than that. And then we get to the really dangerous bits of the speech.
Multiculturalism makes no demands of the incomer to integrate. It has failed because it allowed people to come to our society and live parallel lives in it.
Okay, so she's saying that she wants better integration of first and second generation immigrants. So we're talking about policies that are aimed at improving the lives of minority groups, aimed at breaking down the barriers, the discrimination that might prevent them from getting the better jobs, living in the better areas. Because the government's race report literally says that if you've got an African sounding name, an Indian sounding name, a Bengali sounding name, a Middle Eastern sounding name, you have to send up to 90% more job applications when applying for a job. So the government has been aware for years that social mobility, our ability to move and mix with other parts of society, has been blocked by a filter of racism. But have you seen this government lift a finger to fix that, like anonymous CVs or stronger laws against discrimination? Or does that sound a little bit too woke for this government? Would they much rather defund the areas where those people live and make sure they're trapped in poverty? Again, the Tories create the problem and then weaponize it to win elections based on xenophobia.
It has been too much, too quick, with too little thought given to integration and the impact on social cohesion.
Complaining about a lack of social cohesion with asylum seekers while at the same time regularly referring to them as invaders, including in this speech, is a level of cognitive dissonance that I would need 3 bags of crystal meth and a hammer to the back of the head to reach.
If cultural change is too rapid and too big, then what was already there is diluted. Eventually, it will disappear.
And there we have it. The UK Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, fully embracing the Great Replacement conspiracy theory that we thought was reserved exclusively to neo-Nazis in Charlottesville. The message she is putting out there is that foreigners will end up completely eradicating British society. Be it Western clothing, be it Western food, there are chains of everything from Ford to McDonald's in every corner of the globe. But the idea that it's the West that's at risk of being eradicated is simply delusional.
Illegal migration also poses obvious threats to public safety and national security. We are living with the consequence of that failure today. You can see it play out in the streets all over Europe, from Malmo to Paris, Brussels to Leicester.
Yeah, because only immigrants commit terrorist attacks and kill people. But then we get to the issue of, do we have the resources to take them in?
Accommodation cannot be magicked out of thin air.
Sure, but when you've brought UK house building to the lowest level since World War II, it kind of feels like you're squeezing the poorest people in society so that they feel desperate and unwilling to accept new neighbours so that you can use xenophobia as an election tool. Now, before I show you this next clip, I want you to watch Suella Braverman being asked how asylum seekers are supposed to get here if they want to claim asylum in the UK.
I'm not Syrian, I'm not Afghan, I'm not Ukrainian, not any of those specific schemes. The Dub scheme is historic. What scheme's open to me?
Well, if you are able to get to the UK, you are able to put in an application for asylum.
I would only enter the UK illegally then, wouldn't I?
Well, that would, if you put in your application for asylum upon arrival, that would be the process that you enter.
Okay, so she's saying that the only way to claim asylum in the UK is to enter the UK illegally, which makes it weird for her to then go on to say,
people who choose to come across the channel illegally from another safe country have already showed contempt for our laws.
Okay, so asylum seekers who under international law have the right to enter the UK as long as they claim asylum within a reasonable period of time should be treated as criminals even if they had no other option to enter the UK. And we're talking about people who are desperate enough to risk their lives in unsafe boats in the Channel. And she goes on to acknowledge the international law.
Is the global asylum framework. By this I mean the various well-intentioned legal conventions and treaties that say in effect, if you are fleeing persecution somewhere, you are entitled to make a claim for asylum anywhere, and irrespective of whether you arrived illegally or passed through multiple safe countries along the way, they should present themselves without delay to the authorities. This legal framework is rooted in the 1951 UN Refugee Convention.
So far, so good.
It was created to help resettle people fleeing persecution following the horrors of World War II and the Holocaust.
She's trying to imply that it's no longer relevant to today, because it's a good thing that we no longer have wars or genocide, right?
Article 31 of the Refugee Convention makes clear that it is intended to apply to individuals coming directly from a territory where their life was threatened.
And according to the guidance of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, coming directly includes transiting through other countries for a short period of time. So the scenario that she's about to describe,
where people are able to travel through multiple safe countries and even reside in safe countries for years while they pick and choose their preferred destination to claim asylum, is absurd and unsustainable.
feels like the sort of thing that can be rectified without leaving the Refugee Convention.
Nobody entering the UK by boat from France is fleeing imminent peril. None of them have good cause for illegal entry.
Once again, fueling the absurd narrative that because the UK is located thousands of miles away from the conflict zones that we often inflame, the UK has no moral responsibility to take in refugees from those areas until, of course, maybe France breaks out into all-out war. Again, expressing this degree of moral cowardice publicly is insane to me.
Let me be clear. There are vast swathes of the world where it is extremely difficult to be gay or to be a woman. Where individuals are being persecuted, it is right that we offer sanctuary. But we will not be able to sustain an asylum system if, in effect, simply being gay or a woman or fearful of discrimination in your country of origin is sufficient to qualify for protection.
Just so we're all clear, she gave no specifics at all as to what level of oppression she would think would qualify somebody as a refugee. That was just a big fuck you from her to the LGBT community because she thinks that them hating her will help her in future elections. Straight out of the Lee Anderson playbook.
It'll probably be a mixture of culture wars and trans debate.
I reject the notion that a country cannot be expected to respect human rights if it is not signed up to an international human rights organisation. As if the UK doesn't have a proud history of human rights dating back to Magna Carta, and the ECHR is all that is holding us back from becoming Russia.
Where do I even start? The Magna Carta. The idea that you can use a document from 800 years ago when we still had a fucking feudal system as somehow proof that we can be trusted with human rights today? Mad. Not to mention the absolute axe that her government has taken to human rights, be it noise limits on protest, blocking thousands of people from voting, the normalization of white supremacy, trying to send refugees to a country with a history of shooting them. Most countries have written constitutions that prevent this kind of shit, so international human rights laws are our only unchangeable laws. So we rely on international human rights protections more than most other countries. God, this was a painful video to make because the whole thing, the speech, lasted 30 minutes, so I had to watch it through once to record it, then again to select the key points. All this because Suella Braverman thinks that she can distract everybody from the fact that her government has been driving everybody deeper into poverty by just being as evil as possible. I'm Femi, this has been F Politics, just trying to make sure that politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.